Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when one of America's most trusted morning hosts sits down expecting a thoughtful conversation and ends up in one of the sharpest economic debates daytime TV has seen all year? That's exactly what viewers watched unfold when Robin Roberts joined The View for what was supposed to be a warm segment about her latest projects. Instead, she found herself face to face with Joy Behar in a clash that spiraled from friendly to fiery in minutes. It all started harmlessly. Robin was relaxed, laughing with the panel and sharing stories from her years at GMA. But when Joy steered the conversation toward the rise of remote work, the energy in the room shifted. Joy argued that remote workers were unknowingly hurting small businesses and weakening local economies. Robin pushed back, insisting the issue was more complicated and that workers shouldn't be blamed for adapting to a changing world. The back and forth grew sharper. Joy doubled down, Robin stood her ground, and the audience could feel the tension spreading across the table like a crack in glass. By the time the show cut to commercial, social media was already firing up. Clips went viral, comments exploded, and viewers were left asking the same question. Did daytime TV just expose the biggest cultural divide of the post-pandemic era?
The show opened with a bright mood, the kind you'd expect on a midweek morning when the audience is fresh and the hosts still have their coffee energy. Robin Roberts walked out to loud applause, and she greeted everyone with that calm, warm smile viewers know so well. Joy stood up to hug her, and for a moment, everything looked like a reunion between old friends. Robin settled into her seat, smoothing the edge of her blazer as Whoopi introduced her. They chatted first about Robin's latest projects, her book tour, and a behind-the-scenes story from Good Morning America that had the audience laughing. She talked about early call times, long studio nights, and the odd comfort of working in a building where everyone is half awake until 7 a.m. Her sincerity filled the room. Even Joy nodded along, smiling as she sipped her coffee. Sunny jumped in with a question about Robin's approach to leadership. Robin gave a thoughtful answer about compassion and accountability, and the table seemed to settle into its familiar rhythm. For a while, the conversation flowed easily. It felt like the kind of interview that would end with some applause, a few smiles, and a smooth segue to the next segment. But then, Joy leaned forward. She set her mug down the way she does when she's about to pivot. She looked at Robin with genuine curiosity, but there was an unmistakable spark in her eyes. The producers had prepared a transition toward that day's hot topic, and Joy was ready to steer them there. Robin, you've covered so many economic shifts on GMA, so let me ask you this. With all these people working from home now, do you think they realize the impact it's having on local communities, small shops, restaurants, even tax bases? The audience didn't react right away. It wasn't a hostile question, but it was sharp enough that the tone in the studio dipped for just a second. Robin blinked, surprised by the sudden jump from career talk to economics. She wasn't thrown, but she paused to choose her words. "Well," Robin said, keeping her voice steady, "I think remote work has changed a lot, and we're all still figuring out what it means. But I don't think you can put the weight of an entire economic shift on everyday people doing their best to make a living." Joy nodded, but the way she tapped her pen on the table hinted that she had more to say. Sarah chimed in with a light comment about enjoying the idea of working from her couch, and the audience laughed. The moment eased, but not completely. Something underneath stayed tight. Joy took another small sip of coffee, tilting her head as she studied Robin. It was clear she wasn't dropping the topic. She had a point she wanted to make, and Robin sensed it. The exchange stayed polite, but there was a subtle edge forming between them, the kind only live television can magnify. What started as a gentle conversation was turning into something heavier. The smiles were still there, but they weren't as relaxed. You could feel the air changing, like the room knew something was coming. And it was.
The shift became obvious the moment Joy leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and narrowed her eyes a little. She wasn't being hostile, but she was challenging Robin in a way that made the audience sit up straighter. Joy had that familiar spark, the one that appears when she's convinced she's holding the more practical point of view. I get what you're saying, Joy said, but let's be honest. When people stopped going into the office, entire downtowns started drying up. Coffee shops closed, dry cleaners, lunch places. Cities rely on foot traffic. Remote workers pulled the plug on all of that. Robin nodded slowly, but she didn't look convinced. I hear you, but I don't think it's fair to place blame on workers who are just trying to balance their lives. If the system is fragile enough to collapse because people aren't buying $5 lattes every morning, maybe that says more about the system than the people. That earned a few claps from the audience. Joy noticed it. It didn't slow her down. But come on, Joy said, smiling. You know it's true. The people with the luxury of working from home are saving money on gas, childcare, clothes, while the small business owners who depend on them are left hanging. That struck a nerve. Robin sat up straighter. I don't think remote work is a luxury anymore. For some workers, it's the only way they can afford to keep jobs in cities where the cost of living keeps rising. If local economies can't adapt, that's a planning problem, not a personal one. Sarah glanced between them, sensing the rise in tension. Sunny raised her eyebrow, amused, but also aware things were moving fast. Whoopi, arms crossed, watched the conversation like a referee waiting to step in. Joy leaned forward again. But Robin, the data shows it. Cities have reported huge revenue losses. Small businesses can't survive on the occasional weekend customers. If people stay home, the neighborhood ecosystem falls apart. And I'm not disagreeing that there's an impact, Robin said, keeping her tone even. But let's talk about the flip side. Remote work lets parents be with their kids. It helps people with disabilities stay in the workforce. It cuts commuter pollution. It's not like it's all doom and gloom. Joy waved her hand lightly. Of course there are benefits, but when people make decisions based only on convenience, someone else pays the price. Robin took a breath. Her jaw tightened just a bit. Not anger, but a firm line of resolve. People aren't choosing convenience, Joy. They're choosing survival. They're choosing flexibility because the workspace wasn't built to support everyone equally in the first place. This time the audience reacted more loudly. A mix of applause, murmurs, and a few whoops. Joy glanced toward them, then back to Robin. So you don't think remote workers carry any responsibility? Joy asked. I think their responsibility is to do their jobs, Robin answered. It's policymakers and city planners who have to adjust to the realities of modern work. You can't put that burden on people who are simply trying to keep their lives afloat. Joy shot her brows up. But life was never supposed to be perfectly convenient. Sometimes we do things that benefit community, not just ourselves. Robin's patience started to thin. Working from home doesn't make someone selfish, Joy. Joy raised her shoulders. It does if it harms the people who keep their communities running. A small gasp rippled through the audience. Denise in the front row actually covered her mouth. Robin didn't look shocked, just disappointed. I respect you, Robin, Robin said, her voice lower. But blaming workers instead of the broken policies that shape these cities is unfair. It misses the real root of the problem. The table went quiet for a beat. Joy's jaw clenched slightly, and even Whoopi shifted in her chair as if she sensed the argument crossing into a deeper place. The warmth from earlier was gone now. The debate wasn't just heated, it was personal in a way that neither of them had planned. The air in the studio felt heavier as the conversation edged into deeper territory. The friendly warmth that Robin carried onto the set was still there, but now it was wrapped in something sturdier, a quiet conviction that made the audience lean in. Joy sensed it too, and she wasn't backing down. The rest of the panel watched the two women with wide eyes, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment breathe. Robin took a breath, calmer than her expression suggested. Joy, I don't think this is just about economics. When we talk about remote work, we're talking about real people with real lives. And sometimes discussions like this forget the humanity in all of it. Joy didn't respond right away. She tilted her chin slightly, waiting. Robin continued. During the pandemic, I met so many people who held their families together only because they could work from home. I met a woman, a single mom, who told me she would have lost custody of her son if she didn't have remote work. She couldn't afford childcare and couldn't commute. Remote work let her stay employed and stay present for him. The studio grew quiet. Even Joy's expression shifted. Robin rarely opened up about personal stories on shows like this, especially ones involving strangers. But now she leaned into the emotion, steady and sincere. And I met a man in his 50s, a veteran with mobility challenges. He told me he felt useful again because he could contribute without the physical strain of daily travel. Remote work didn't just give him a paycheck, it gave him dignity. A few audience members murmured in agreement. One woman fanned her eyes like she might cry. Robin wasn't dramatic about it. She wasn't performing. She was remembering. I know small businesses are hurting. I know cities are trying to rebuild, but people's lives were changed in ways they never expected. We can't dismiss that. Joy waited a moment before responding. The fire in her tone softened, but the firmness stayed. I hear you, I really do, but I also know entire communities that are struggling. People who ran mom-and-pop shops for decades. People who poured their savings into downtown storefronts. They didn't get a vote in this shift. She gestured toward the audience, her voice carrying weight. I grew up watching small business owners put everything into their work. They were part of the neighborhood. Now, many of them are closing. I walk past empty shops in Manhattan that used to be packed every morning. These people matter too. The crowd nodded, some clapped. The divide in the room was visible, half relating to Robin's compassion, half feeling Joy's nostalgia for a community-centered economy. Robin's expression softened again. I'm not dismissing their struggle, but we keep talking like workers caused this problem. They didn't. This is the result of decades of rising rents, rising costs, and decisions made way above their pay grade. Joy sighed, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. Maybe, but when you remove thousands of people from the daily flow of a city, everything changes. I'm not saying workers are villains. I'm saying they're part of an ecosystem, and when one part pulls away, the rest cracks. Robin leaned forward, her tone more vulnerable. Joy, I grew up watching my parents work 2 jobs to keep food on the table. If they could have worked from home and had more time with us, their entire lives would have been different. Remote work didn't exist then. People didn't have choices. Today, they do. That matters. For the first time in the exchange, Joy looked genuinely moved. Her eyes softened, almost apologetic, though her posture stayed firm. I respect what you're saying, and I get that people want balance, but I worry about the country losing the in-person connections that build community. I worry we're drifting apart. Robin nodded. But blaming the workers won't bring communities back. Better policies will. The audience clapped loudly now, some for Robin's emotion, some for Joy's honesty. The energy in the room felt charged, but also human. Still, beneath the empathy, tension continued to simmer. Both women had opened up emotionally, but neither had changed their stance.
The emotional temperature had shifted, but the debate was far from over. Joy sat back in her chair, arms crossed, as if she was bracing for whatever came next. Robin kept her hands folded on the table, projecting calm that didn't fully hide the fire building underneath. Sonny leaned in, trying to ease the tension. Maybe there's space for both sides. Maybe it's not. Joy cut in, sharper than she intended. No, because we're dancing around the real issue. Robin keeps saying we shouldn't blame workers, but I'm not blaming them. I'm saying the choice to stay home affects everybody, and pretending it doesn't is irresponsible. A few audience members gasped. Robin blinked, surprised not by the words, but by the tone. Robin, Joy said softly, you just accused millions of people of hurting the country without realizing it. That feels a lot like blaming. Joy held up her hand.
You're twisting my point. Robin shook her head. I don't need to twist anything. You're making hardworking people the face of a problem they didn't create. Joy's lips tightened. And you're acting like remote work is some magical solution that comes without consequences. That did it. The polite tension snapped. Robin leaned forward, her voice low but unwavering. I never said it was perfect. But what I won't do is shame people who finally have a way to work without sacrificing their families, their health, or their sanity. The audience murmured, sensing a shift from debate to confrontation. Joy fired back. And I'm not pretending downtowns are collapsing because of rent hikes and corporate greed alone. People change their habits. That has fallout. Robin's eyes flashed. You know what else has fallout? Forcing people back into a system that was broken long before Zoom meetings existed. Joy slammed her palm lightly onto the table. We're talking about society, Robin. Society doesn't work when everyone stays home. Robin didn't flinch. Society also doesn't work when people are burned out, underpaid, and barely seeing their kids. Denise and Anna exchanged glances. Whoopi heard out an audible, oh boy, but didn't interrupt. Joy's voice rose. You're romanticizing remote work like it's the cure to everything. And you're romanticizing the past, Robin shot back. Working in a building doesn't make someone more loyal, more committed, or more American. The room erupted in whispers. Phones were already out. Clips were being recorded. Joy leaned in, eyes narrowed. So what, Robin? Are you saying local economies don't matter? Are you saying thousands of small businesses dying is just collateral damage? A flicker of frustration crossed Robin's face. I'm saying the burden shouldn't be placed on workers. They didn't create the rent hikes. They didn't create the inflation. They didn't choose corporate consolidation. You're pointing at the wrong people. Joy's cheeks flushed red. I'm pointing at reality. Your reality, not everyone's. A long, tense silence stretched across the table. Joy finally stood up, adjusting her chair with a loud scrape. The audience jolted. Cameras zoomed in. Producers scrambled off stage. So that's it, Joy? Said voice tight. We can't even have a conversation without you turning it into some moral judgment? Robin stood up as well, though calmer. I'm having the conversation. You're blaming people who are just trying to survive. Joy let out a sharp breath. I'm done being painted as the villain because I care about communities. And I'm done watching workers get blamed for problems they didn't create, Robin answered, her tone steady. Whoopi hurried in, stepping between them, hands raised. Ladies, commercial break, now! But it was too late. The tension had already cracked through the room. One of the hosts walked off in frustration. The other stood her ground, eyes fierce but controlled. The moment would replay online for days, a breaking point neither woman intended, but both had reached. The studio lights dimmed for commercial, but the shock hanging in the air didn't move an inch.
The studio stayed quiet long after the cameras stopped. You could almost hear the weight of everything Rowan had said settling into the room. He didn't make a dramatic exit. He didn't storm out. He just stood there for a moment, hands at his sides, breathing in slowly, as if he needed to anchor himself before walking away. The audience didn't clap. They didn't boo. They just watched him, trying to take in what they had witnessed. A man who almost never lets his personal life slip into public view had just peeled back everything he'd been holding together for years, and everyone could feel how much it cost him. Kay stayed in her seat, shoulders tight, eyes following Rowan as he headed toward the corridor behind the stage. She didn't call after him. She didn't try to explain herself. For once, she realized words would only make things worse. The rest of the panel didn't move either. They knew this wasn't the moment to spit out opinions or defend one side or the other. Backstage, Rowan didn't collapse into a rant or a breakdown. He just leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. He wasn't angry that things got heated. He wasn't even angry that Kay had pushed him.
What got to him was the realization that he'd become a father who second-guessed every decision, every boundary, every attempt to guide his daughter through a world that changes faster than any parent can keep up with. He cared so much that it scared him. A crew member brought him a glass of water. He accepted it with a nod, still trying to steady himself. The world often sees him as a man built for comedy, someone who can turn anything awkward or painful into a laugh. But today he showed something else. He showed that quiet people crack too. They just do it softly. Out in the lobby, viewers were already arguing. Some sided with Kay, saying kids deserve ownership over their digital past. Others defended Rowan, saying parents have the right to protect their children from mistakes that might follow them forever. The debate had struck a nerve long before he walked off stage. His reaction only made it feel more human. By the time he stepped outside, evening light hit the street. He paused, letting the cool air settle the last of his adrenaline. He wasn't proud of how far things went, but he wasn't ashamed either. Sometimes the truth only comes out when the pressure breaks you open. Sometimes that's the only way people really hear you. He walked to the car waiting for him at the curb, shoulders settling back into place, but eyes still tired. He knew the headlines were already being written. He knew social media would spin it every which way. But tonight, none of that mattered. He'd spoken from the part of himself he rarely shows. If you liked this powerful moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Do parents have the right to erase their child's digital mistakes, or should kids own that history themselves?